Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. What I'd like to talk about today is the move of Pluto into Aquarius, but not the full video I'm going to do on that. I'm going to do a separate video on Pluto moving into Aquarius, which is going to be quite a full video. So when I get a moment, I'll do that. But in this video, I want to focus on Pluto squaring the Nodal Axis, which is beginning on the 23rd of March, 2023. Now, this will last until November 2023, so really for the rest of this year virtually, transiting Pluto is going to be squaring the Nodal Axis. Now, the Nodal Axis, my last book was about the Nodal Axis. It's linked to the orbit of the moon, but the North Node is really our future collective destiny, where we're headed, and the South Node is our collective past, what we're trying to lose, what we're trying to shed. So the peak of this year is going to be between April and mid-July, but we're going to be feeling it the whole of this year. And indeed, that kind of process is going to be operating through 2024 as well. But we are really going to be seeing this and feeling this in our world, because this is going to signal huge social and political changes and a very powerful evolutionary urge for change in many, many respects in our reality, many, many respects in our world. Now, if you have any planets between 27 degrees of the cardinal signs, those are Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, or up to 4 degrees of the fixed signs, those are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, that band, you are going to be feeling this more personally and directly in your lives. If you don't have any planets or angles within that band, 27 of the cardinals to 4 degrees of the fixed signs, you'll be seeing this all operating in the world, but it may not hit you quite as personally. But we are all going to witness this. There's, this is the big ending and beginning I've been talking about, or certainly one major aspect of it, in so many of the videos. So this is going to involve very big personal choices and changes, and a great deal of intensity, I think, will come for many, many people. And if you have planets in the fixed signs, in those early degrees, 0 to 4 of the fixed signs, or even if you have a lot of fixity in your chart, a lot of planets in those fixed signs of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, there's always a resistance with fixed signs to let change happen or initiate change. You want to kind of hang on to what has been. But we will all be forced to evolve and change in some really big ways, I think. The mutable signs will be able to flow with these changes a little more easily. And the mutable signs being Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So let me share the chart with you, and then I can talk you through this. Now, what I've done here is take the chart for the move of Pluto into Aquarius for the 23rd of March this year. Now, this is just really the first glimpse of Pluto moving into Aquarius. It will only stay there until the 11th of June, so only sort of 2.5 months. And then it will backtrack into Capricorn, but I'll talk more about this in detail in a moment. But I'm just going to focus for the whole of this video really on this, what is called a T-square. It looks wonky, but it's actually much more even than this chart suggests. A T-square between the nodal axis. Here we have the North Node at 5 degrees of Taurus and the South Node at 5 degrees of Scorpio, and Pluto, which has just literally moved into Aquarius on the 23rd of March. Now, this creates a sort of vice, if you like. Incredible pressure. These are hard aspects, and it creates an incredible pressure for change. And Pluto comes into this aspect because Pluto has an elliptical orbit. There's no regularity to this, but big deals that we've got at the moment. Pluto moving out of Capricorn into Aquarius, Saturn just changing sign, a lot of the dwarf planets changing sign, the shifts in consciousness that we're experiencing. I mean, there are so many layers to these endings and beginnings, and that's what makes this a much, much bigger issue. But this T-square is going to last for 8 months, as I say, up until November this year, and will still ripple and ricochet into next year. So just to remind you, the North Node being in Taurus, this is to do with banking, wealth, currencies. It's with its axis, South Node in Scorpio, it's very much the financial axis, but it's also linked to food and agriculture as well. So South Node in Scorpio, very much linked to the financial axis. This is about joint money or collective money, really. It's linked to your investments, your mortgages, your loans. It's also linked to the banking system in a similar way to Capricorn, actually. But it's where you've invested in the stock market, in bonds, or that kind of thing. It's big money. It can be underhand money, criminal money. It's also linked, Scorpio, to toxicity of all kinds. It's also linked to all forms of betrayal. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, which makes this T-square even stronger. And if we remember that Pluto, the myth is linked to the myth of Persephone, where Persephone was kidnapped and taken down to Hades, and she had to cross the Styx, STYX, and it was all very dark and scary. And then she finally came up to the light and was stronger and wiser. But what Pluto does is take us right down to the metaphorical death, as it were, and then bring back up to the rebirth. It's a death and rebirth process, which doesn't mean we're all going to die, but there's a death and rebirth of the systems. Pluto moving into Aquarius is our social structures and systems. So this financial axis is really going to come under a big squeeze. And because the nodal axis is always retrograde, what that means is that the nodal axis actually moves clockwise around this clock face. So this is going to tighten and tighten like a vice. So the north node is going to move, and equally that will affect the south node, to 4 degrees, 3 degrees, 2 degrees, 0 of Taurus, and then start to move into the late degrees, 29 degrees of Aries in July. And that's why between April and mid-July, this will get tighter and tighter. Because the other reason it will get tighter, I've just mentioned that Pluto is only going to stay in Aquarius the very first couple of degrees until the 11th of June, and it then retrogrades back into the last couple of degrees of Capricorn. It actually moves back into 29 degrees of Capricorn, the critical degree, the anoretic degree, the very final degree of Pluto's process, which I'll remind you of in a moment. It's at that critical degree in June, July, December this year, and also January, September to November next year, at that critical degree. Now, it is going to move back, Pluto, to just beyond 28 degrees of Capricorn, 27 degrees, 53 minutes. Hence me saying if you've got anything between 27 degrees of the cardinal signs onwards to 4 degrees of the fixed, you're going to be feeling this T-square. But the real heat is going to come when Pluto is at that critical degree. Now, remember that the process of Pluto is to reveal any corruption, any lack of integrity, accountability, transparency connected to the sign it is moving through. It's quite a complex process because it also at the same time intensifies the nature of that sign. So Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008. So what did we have then? We had we had the financial crisis. That was global. And in fact, if you've ever seen a brilliant film called The Big Short, and if you haven't, I really recommend it. It's a brilliant film that apparently is very true to life, that we were within hours of the global financial system collapsing. It didn't. And indeed, it was patched up. Capricorn was patched up, big money, big banking. And if anything, particularly over the last 3 years, the strength of those top-down control systems, particularly of government, corporations, institutions, Capricorn verticality, has strengthened. Pluto is where the power lies. But at the same time, it's moving through these final degrees. It's, the image I keep getting, and I think David Farrell referred to this as well, it's like the bulldozer with a wrecking ball. Keep swinging the wrecking ball at those top-down structures. That will be a very powerful process this year because Pluto will, after the 11th of June, backtrack into Capricorn and will stay there till June next year, as I say, and then spend from September to November next year in Capricorn as well. That's the final wrecking ball. But this year will be a big year of endings and collapse. And then it only spends 2.5 months, as I say, in Aquarius this year. It spends 9 months in Aquarius next year. And then from December 2024, it spends 20 years until 2044 in Aquarius. Now, Aquarius is the sign of freedom, human rights, civil rights. We can see these are very big issues for us. But with the shift of Pluto from top-down structures into Aquarius, this is the sign of the people, we are going to see this shift into much more horizontally based society. It's not going to happen in a day, a week, a month, but gradually we are going to see grassroots up communities, collaborations, people coming together in a much more equitable sense, no matter what their status and wealth, but coming together around value systems, Taurus, to create a much more loving world. So this is what this whole process is about. So, but the reason I think the real heat around this T-square financially will be sometime between now and July is because that nodal axis shifts out of Taurus Scorpio, the financial axis, into Aries Libra in July, in late July. Now, when it does that, the North Node being in Aries and Jupiter being in Aries right now is preparing us for this. This is much more to do with our courage, our bravery, being a pioneer, setting out on a whole new episode, having a sense of self-sufficiency, autonomy, sovereignty, but standing in your power, but not alone, standing in your power, but coming together with others who are doing the same and really having a stronger sense of your uniqueness, your unique gift that you can offer to that group. Now, so as I say, this vice, this T-square continues all of this year until November. And what's fascinating is initially this T-square is in the fixed signs, as I've described, and then as Pluto moves back into the end of Capricorn again in June, the nodal axis catches up with those late degrees of the cardinal signs in July when it moves to 29 degrees of the cardinals. Remember, nodal axis goes backwards. It moves from kind of 29 degrees of a sign to 0 degrees of a sign. So the dance is between initially the fixed signs and then the cardinal signs for the rest of the year until January. So let me stop sharing here Because the other thing that's very important to say here as well is that the eclipses, this is such an incredibly powerful period in history, because the eclipses that we have, solar eclipse coming up on the 20th of April, an incredibly strong eclipse that Pluto is very involved with in this T-square. We also have another lunar eclipse on the 5th of May. That is at 14 degrees of Scorpio. That is the last eclipse in this series in the Taurus-Scorpio financial axis for another 9 years. And Pluto, again, is very involved in that, and so is Uranus. I'll talk obviously more about this as we get closer, but Uranus, the planet of shocks, surprises, radical sudden changes in Taurus, banking, money, currencies, is very involved in that lunar eclipse as well. And Pluto is going to keep on triggering those eclipse points of April and May this year into next year. So intensity is certainly the watchword, and so is evolutionary change. And although at times we may feel that we're whitewater rafting with the speed of fast-moving events, the speed of change that's happening, know that this is part of the divine plan. If it wasn't part of the astrology, I couldn't see it. If it wasn't part of the astrology, I couldn't see it. So this is meant to be happening because it is the time of the end of the old world, the old systems, the old reality as we've known it. Isn't it interesting that Saturn has just moved into Pisces? Saturn has been very connected to our 3D tangible reality. That is now dissolving in Pisces. It's going to be there till February 2026. Our sense of linear time, Saturn in myth linked to Chronos, chronology, linear time, is going to be dissolving too in Pisces. Hence the sense of time speeding up, that days last about 2 hours now. Everything is so compressed. So all of this is shifting us pretty rapidly from the old world to the new. So, and what's interesting as well about this, if I look back historically, and as I say, I'm going to do this whole video on Pluto moving into Aquarius as well. But if I look back to a time in history when Pluto was also in Aquarius and also in a T-square to the nodes, and they were also in Taurus, Scorpio, this was in 1789, a super important year for Pluto in Aquarius. Now, the nodal axis was then the other way around. The north node was in Scorpio and the south node was in Taurus, but nevertheless, still the financial axis. And as you know, I've talked about in other videos how this was very important for the US Bill of Rights at this time. It was also a massive year in France when the poor peasants who were starving stormed the Bastille on the 14th of April 1789. They took down the monarchy, the monarch was executed, and France became a republic. But over the coming, and that didn't happen, first year that Pluto was into Aquarius. It was 12 years into Pluto being in Aquarius. But then nevertheless, it happened when Pluto was square to the nodal axis. So this resulted in the coming months and years very big financial shifts in France. Also, just to remind you that within a month of that happening, the Assemblée Nationale published what was called the Declaration of Man, gave many more legal rights, as the Bill of Rights did in the US, many more legal rights to the ordinary people, equality before the law, etc., etc. And although I know democracy has certainly been squeezed in recent times, we are re-entering these cycles now. And this became the foundational document for democracy across Europe, We are re-entering this cycle right now, 23rd of March, 2023. We're in the crucible of this. But going back to the financial side, after the execution of the monarchy, there were many things that began to change the financial structure in France. Pluto is linked to taxes, it's linked to debt, default, etc. But the tax system started to change in France because the rich people that had huge tax benefits, they were reduced, and ordinary people started to get more tax benefits. There was a whole new system of grassroots up, social enterprise, small farms were birthed. This was actually the beginning of a middle class that had never, ever existed before in I think any society really, but certainly not in France. There'd always been the rich, the ruling class, and the poor. So people coming together, forming social enterprises, grassroots up. So this is another indicator of the power of how this is going to bring about huge social and political change, structural change. Now, Pluto moving into Aquarius on its own will do that, but you add in the T-square to the nodal axis, and this becomes the ignition point for Pluto's shift into Aquarius and all that will bring over these, just the ignition point is going to last 8 months. It's going to be super strong till mid-July this year. We are going to see rapid change in our reality. So just know this is meant to happen, and it's happening so quickly because of the shifts in consciousness, because of the shifts in the energy, cosmic energy, galactic energy, photonic energy. Talked about this so often. These big jumps in consciousness that we are having as humanity mean that we cannot any longer sustain anything that is not born of love, anything that is low frequency, low vibration, that doesn't have our highest good in the way it operates. So just know that, and just know that as Pluto moves into Aquarius, where will it be shining the light on any corruption? Well, it's going to be shining the light on any corruption in science and technology. This is going to be interesting. So not to say that there's going to be a kind of crisis around those things as they were straight away. It could take some months, as it did in 2008 with the financial crash. It could take some months, but they're going to be very big revelations, very big issues around science and technology beginning this year and continuing for many years to come. So just a reminder with all of this, there's going to be 10 tons of color and drama going on in our 3D reality. Please don't watch the news, because that will increase your focus, your anxiety, your fear around the collapse. Don't focus on what's ending, focus on what's beginning. Use all of our spiritual power, sovereignty, autonomy, creativity to create a more beautiful, loving world. That's where our focus needs to be. Communities are coming together all over the world, online and in person. They're buying land, they're growing food, they're sharing joyfully, willingly, investing money, which they would have invested it before in the stock market for their own profit. No more. They willingly want to invest in their like-minded community, people who have the same value system, Taurus. So focus with joy, focus with love on what we are bringing in at speed in our world, because the more you do that, the faster the new earth will come, and the more you personally yourself will be on that higher timeline of love. Now, we are all going to be, the other thing I really, really want to say here, is that the equinox, I mentioned this with David Farrell, but the energy around the Aries equinox and the next few days following, particularly the 22nd, the 23rd, are enormous days of new timelines opening up, new portals to those timelines opening up. Keep welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. Keep welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. Know that these are the doorways to a multidimensionality we have never experienced in our lifetimes before. We've lived very much, all of us, in 3D, and this is going to crack us open like that. The analogy of the hen's egg, the chicken's egg that I used, this is going to crack us open to multidimensionality. We are going to, at times, feel that we don't know what our reality is. You know, we're going to be driving along a road and then we're driving along the same piece of road again that we've just covered. We could suddenly jump to 5 miles down the road. You know, there's going to be time slippage and timeline slippage. So just know that. Know we're not going mad, although people who don't have the same knowledge as us with the astrology may feel that because it's going to be so destabilizing. Be there with compassion. We are jumping timelines. We are leaping in consciousness in a way that we have never done in certainly many lifetimes and possibly all of our lifetimes. It's immensely exciting, but it's only exciting if you're on those higher timelines and that eagle's perch. If you're in the demolition, it will feel more fearful. So that's why please, please, please be aware of where you're putting your focus and attention, because you are quantum entangling, as I've spoken so many times, with what you're putting your focus on. So just keep saying to yourself, I live in bliss and peace and love. I say this many times in my day. I live in bliss and peace and love. I'm welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. I'm welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. So I hope that's helped you. A lot of information here. I am going to be talking about Pluto's move into Aquarius for the rest of my days, certainly my career for sure. And I'll do that video in the next couple of weeks, I hope, when I get some time. So a very powerful, pivotal period of choice, of focus, of energy, of attention, and God bless. We are on one rocking ride with our consciousness. Bye for now, everybody. I'll be back very soon. Thanks for listening.